last 10 years, we've been striving to create those self-dependent communities through grassroots leaders. And seeing that it is working is, you feel satisfied that your approach was right. And on the other side, there is also a scare, of post-pandemic situation, like mental health situation, livelihood situations, etc., etc. So that's why I said it has multiple shades. The spirit has multiple shades.
Yes. So what you're describing really is that the fellowship program has created a remarkable safety net, actually, a sort of social safety net by people deeply knowing their community, deeply knowing their neighbours, and able to lead. Could you just share, because of course we're all needing to tap into this now, these kind of qualities in our own communities. If you were to pick out a couple of things that you see fellows develop as they grow, through your leadership program, what are some of the qualities that you see people find in themselves that they maybe didn't know that they had? I know, for example, a lot of the women in the program are people who've come from circumstances of domestic violence. They've had very tough lives. Now they find themselves in these leadership positions. Say a little bit about the qualities that you see people develop.
Yeah, so actually, I just want to add one thing on what we are doing in addition, because Louis has already explained what we've been doing, but there is also a component of gendered aspect to the whole relief work that we've been doing. So primarily because CORO has been working on women empowerment and gender equality since its inception, and that has been our cross-cutting value through everything that we do. So actually what we had done, even in the kits that we had sent to all households, we send the number of our contact person, and details, so that a woman, especially a woman or anybody in the family, can contact us immediately if they want to. And as many research have shown that in the lockdown period, the gender-based violence, especially the domestic violence and child abuse, has increased, and then women don't find it comfortable to proactively call anybody, even if they have contact. So we realize this limitation. What we have doing is, because we have this database, so for example, in Mumbai, we are working with, say, 10,000 plus households. So we have phone numbers, contact numbers of each of these households. And in Marathwada, we have contact numbers of more than 15,000 single women. So actually now we have actually divided all these households amongst us, and we are trying to contact people, and saying how are you, everything. And it's not related to domestic violence as such, kind of. But we thought touching base with people, because they're so frustrated. People have mental health issues. Even men have many issues, just not women, because everybody is sitting in the house. So there is distress within family, within those four walls. Just making a phone call saying, how are you? I just remembered you. And if you have anything, just call us, if you feel like contacting us. This was just like touching it. So that is what we have planned, and we have already started in both this thing. And I think this will help people more. In terms of, if a woman wants to talk about the domestic violence or child abuse that is there in the family, or even, we also thought that talking to men is part of our strategy in this lockdown period. It's just not women, because you don't counsel only women. You can talk, and since we are working with family as a unit and domestic violence, and also working with men extensively, so we are also calling men. So that is another strategy that we added to this gender dimension of the relief work. Then. And coming back to your question, Lindsay, about what fellows understand about them. Actually, they understand them as a totally new person. I mean, I would say, that expansion of power, because the fellowship program is completely based on the premise that it is that fragmented sense of identity of marginalized people that restricts them from saying what they want to say, doing what they want to do, etc. So if you trigger on that identity, kind of thing, and say that you can do it, and we are all together, and that sense of, I would say, inner self or inner space or power within, that gets triggered in the fellowship program, and that we have seen invariably happening in Maharashtra all 10 years, in Rajasthan, that 4 years that we've been working with every fellow.
Right, right.
And that understanding of self, completely different understanding of self, your own power, your own strengths, that transforms a person. And that's how I think people who were not able to even say a word in their own communities in front of anyone, now really stand individually as a leader also, and collectively as a community also, to seek what they want to see and what is their right, kind of.
Fabulous, thank you. I'm going to pass to Beth now to just collect 3 or 4 questions, Beth, if you would. We'll hear the questions one after the other, and then I'll pass them to Sujata and Lewis to respond to. So if you tell people how to ask a question, what they have to do.
Sure. So we're going to use the hand raise function. If you'd like to ask a question, raise your hand, and we'll get to a couple of you today. And if you need to know how to raise your hand, if you're on your computer, you can look at the bottom of your Zoom window, and you may see a raise hand button. And you can just click that. If you don't see a raise hand button, then click participants, and a bar will come up on the right, and on that bar there will be an option that says raise hand. If you're on your phone, it's similar, that you'll see at the bottom of the Zoom window a raise hand button, and if you don't see that, on the right there's 3 dots that say more. You can click those 3 dots, and one of the options will be to raise hand. So yeah, we'd love to get some of your questions. Oh, I see some of you have raised your hands, so we'll start with Trina, and I'm going to ask a couple questions, or take a couple questions before they respond. So Trina?
Hi. I was wondering that, so all the action around the pandemic so far has been firefighting, immediate relief, which was of course necessary. But as you know, like the lockdown in India got extended today, and it's likely to get extended more. And I was wondering what people, especially leaders like Sujata and Lewis, are thinking about long-term plans, be it for their organizations or the sector as a whole. Lewis did mention a little bit about how the sector as a whole is suffering because a lot of funds are going to PM Care money. So like, what kind of issues are we expecting will become deprioritized because of this? So like, what should organizations be thinking of in terms of like, how do we cope with this long term?
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And next we'll go to Alice.
Hi, I am also working in with Oscar Foundation in Mumbai, who are busy, just as you are, working, doing food relief down in Colaba and Cuff Parade. And the team similarly found very similar things to you described. But what we're finding now through working, we normally work with children in football and education, but obviously the children are now stuck in the one-room homes with their families and are becoming quite distressed, we're finding, and actually very bored. So I wondered whether you had anything that you were doing that was helping with that. I mean, we've come up with a few ideas that we're going to try via using WhatsApp and things on the parents' phones, but any hints or tips of what you're doing would be great.
Great, thank you. And we'll take 2 more. We'll take Claire and then Susila. So Claire.
There we go. Good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to actually just delve into a little bit about the longer term plans as well, particularly in terms of the realism of what field work is going to look like. And particularly where we have groups of meetings with young people or with constituencies or grand panchayats or whoever the community-based institutions are, what is really going to happen with that? What's the alternative going to be? Thank you.
Great, thank you, Claire. And Susila, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Um, so, first of all, thank you for having me. And through a cousin's wife, I know about CORO's work. She's involved in Mumbai, and that's how I came to know about y'all. And so my question is, I know people are donating money to PM Cares Fund, but we don't know how much of that money will actually reach the people who need help right now. So is there any way that you can educate people to give the money directly to NGOs like yours, so that people in need will get that money? And then I also would like to know the specific situation in Dharavi, because that's a very crowded area in Mumbai. That's 2 questions already, but can I ask a third one?
Go for it.
I don't know whether CORO exists in the South. So I know I live in the UK, but I'm also concerned about the southern states, Tamil Nadu in particular, which is not governed well at the moment, in my opinion. Yeah, okay. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. So I'm going to quickly try to field that gathering of questions. Lewis, maybe you could start by commenting on how you see organizations responding to the longer term, be that coping with immediate crisis and balancing that out with longer term challenges, but also the sheer sort of physical problems of coming together. How do you see things shaping up, and how do you see people adapting in the non-profit world? You're on mute, Lewis. You're on mute.
Yeah. So thanks, Trina and Claire, for that question about the long-term plans. So, when we started this emergency aid program, our view was the government is going to step in eventually. So, but the time the government takes to step in, people are going to be suffering. So why don't we go and supply food and help to these people today, because they need it today and not 10 days later. And our aim was also, we come in over here and do it for a short period of time before the government steps in, because this really is the role of the government to do. But what we realized is that 2 things. One is that it's been already 3 weeks and the government hasn't sort of stepped up the way we expected it to. And that's why NGOs have been supplying more food than actually the government has been doing. And secondly, as the team in CORO, people like Mahendra and Pallavi explained to me, that a lot of people in our communities would, even if the government swung into action, would still be excluded because they don't get covered by the various government schemes, either because of paperwork or other reasons. So those people will still be out of the ambit. So one part is that the government's going to hopefully step in with some aid. I mean, the government has proposed a lot of stuff, but it's just not being delivered yet. Secondly is, how do we make sure that the government safety net gets extended to a wider set of people? So we're actually in the process of writing a note for the government, highlighting the people who are currently not covered by these safety nets, and proposing ways to include them also so that they get covered. Because supplying aid indefinitely to a lot of these people from the non-profit side is not a viable proposition. So that's one. Secondly, we raised a lot of money. We raised about $170,000 in the last 2 weeks, but that's not enough. We need a lot more. So we're running out of the money. So we're now also talking to a few other people, organizations, saying that, we've got the ability to distribute. If you have the money, we'll distribute it for you. So those conversations are going on. And there was a question also from Cecilia about PM Cares. This is a sensitive topic because it does take away money that's going in for the nonprofit side. But as you know, in a situation like this, which is like a war-like situation where everyone has to rally around and not be critical. Having said that, I have written an article for one of the leading papers, and I'll send that to you, Lindsay, which basically argues for why we need to use PM Cares as a way to get more people involved. How can that money be used to fund a lot of nonprofits also? How can that money be used to look at solutions which are more distributed as opposed to just centralized answers to all the problems of a country. So that's where we are. Now, the point which Sujata also talked about earlier is that, what happens after this? So immediate relief is done, but the economy is going to be hit so badly. A lot of these people may not be able to get jobs back over there. What do we do with those? And that's something which we have to figure out. What type of method of livelihoods can be given? What type of emotional support can we give also to some of these people? And I think I just pause now.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Sujata, could you say a little bit about what is going on in Dharavi? For those who don't know, Dharavi is the largest slum in Mumbai. Huge number of people live there. Could you describe a little bit specifically what's going on there and in other similar communities? And also this question about children, children stuck at home, how you're responding to that.
Yeah, so actually Dharavi is very well-known slum in Asia in that sense, low-income community. But there are almost equally big and equally complicated slums all over Mumbai. So whatever is true for Dharavi will be true for other slums as well. And so one thing is lot of, because the testing has also increased in Mumbai and in Maharashtra, number of people coming positive has also increased. So there are people who have seen positive in Dharavi. So actually those areas are being quarantined, etc. But this social distancing or whatever physical distancing doesn't make really any sense in communities like Dharavi, because all communities, a house, a room where 10 by 10 feet by 10 feet room where 5-6 people are staying together, including elderly people and children. So, and then everybody has to access community toilet. Community toilets are places where people sneeze, touch, wash, cough, everything. So whatever you're asking people not to do, they do it in the community toilet. So actually that social distancing or self-quarantine has really limited meaning in when it comes to slums. So that is also complicating the situation. Now in Dharavi especially, we saw on TV also, and that's what the government has been saying, they are going from home to home and trying to test, even in rudimentary way, like they test temperature. If anybody in the family is having temperature. So that's how they are identifying people. So it's a huge task, and it's a complete recipe for community transmission in that sense, if we see, because some people who have been seen positive haven't had the travel history that everybody was talking about earlier. So so the situation in Dharavi and similar slums in Mumbai is that in terms of see, everybody is currently, somebody said just now, and it's right, we are all involved into firefighting. Actually, it will really require some mental space to think, because it was so extraordinary. The thing that we are dealing with currently is so extraordinary that everybody is trying to reach to some thing. But currently the need is firefighting, and everybody has jumped the bandwagon in firefighting. But what we can definitely see, I mean, I've been on 2-3 other calls also where people who are doing relief work were together, and what comes as a common factor is, something that will be very crucial is livelihood and mental health issues after the epidemic is on. Because one is people, it's not just about migrants. I mean, migrants issue is absolutely worst, and all of you must have been seeing all those pictures of lakhs of migrants going from one state to other, and also being they were disinfected. They were, so that were, heartbreaking kind of pictures that we have seen. So that is on one side, but also, and it is not only about daily wages, but people who are also employed as marginalized marginalized sector. So for example, domestic worker. For example, there are so many women in community who are working as domestic worker in different houses. So that skepticism and fear around corona is so high. I'm sure nobody will ask the worker to come to their place for another 6-7 months minimum till everything gets normalized, and then that fear is gone. Same is like ironing, people who do ironing. Now I think every house has stopped ironing, kind of people who iron clothes, etc. So these kind of all people who are working either as self-employed or also marginally employed sectors. So these are also going to have a big hit. So how do we deal with that? So it's just people are thinking about that. But fortunately, one fortunate thing I would say is many donors, I mean, especially I can tell you about all CORO donors, they are coming back to their partners saying, don't worry about the programmatic aspect of the project that you had already submitted, because that will get hampered anyway. Those activities people will not be able to carry out because they need people coming together to do those activities, etc. So that is not possible. But fortunately, donors are aware. I mean, they are telling partners that don't worry about that. Let's do this first and let's think about this. But you reserve money. But there will be problems. I mean, even if donors are saying this kind of thing right now, but there will be problem because salaries of NGO people, how long they will get sustained through this grants, etc. So all those issues are there. They are very complicated. No answer to that. Even on the question of children, kind of. So actually nothing. People are doing some very basic things currently, but there is no very disciplined intervention, not very well thought intervention that has come up yet.
So we're all actually, aren't we, in new territory, including, the very notion of social distancing in such a packed living accommodation. We are all, I think, around the world needing to find new ways forward. We need to come to an end now. I want to thank everybody very much for joining us. A couple of closing messages to you. We are fundraising for CORO. You should have received details of how to do that tax effectively, wherever it is you're based. If you want to follow up with one of us, please do drop us a note. If you can't find the mail, we're looking for donations of any size. We'd love your help in contributing to the amazing work of our colleagues in CORO. So please do respond to that fundraising outreach. I want to also just invite any of you to follow us on social media. Go back to your social media, tag us at Leaders Quest with the hashtag Leaders Link. We'd love to promote this conversation and further conversations across all of your networks. And to say that next Wednesday, I'll have a similar conversation, same time, same place, with Nigel Topping, who is high-level champion for COP26. That's the UN Climate Conference due to take place this November, now postponed to next year. He'll talk about how we take that postponement in a very positive light and use it to accelerate change on, addressing climate change rather than as a setback. Lewis, Sujata, thank you very much indeed for your time today. We've really appreciated it with you. Thanks for bringing to life your work and some of what's happening in Mumbai. And thank you to everybody who's joined us. Really hope to see you next week. Very much appreciate you being in touch. Stay well, stay safe, and make the most of the positives of this experience with your families and whoever you're closest to.